Hello, listener, and welcome to Book 5, Chapter 4 of Bite-Sized Tales, the audio flash fiction podcast. In today's story, we begin a new serial of stories and meet our initial character, Garret, and learn about his mission. This story is a bit of an experiment of sorts, which will be explained in the author's note. The Burden of Protection, Part 1. Garret's Mission. Garret sat along the bench in the Inn of All Good Things. Resting his back against the logs and daub wall, he stretched both limbs out on the bench. Taking another nursing sip of the velvet-colored wine, he surveyed the crowd. This had become Garret's activity of preference for the last few weeks. He enjoyed it so much he'd come to gamify the event. Using the cubes he'd whittled himself, Garret would roll to decide the days, hours, and length of time he would spend at All Good Things. This inn was his preferred choice, not because it was any better or worse than the multitude of other taverns, inns, or wine and ale-soaked dens within the walls of Threshold, but because the owner was a close friend to his family, and Garret could drink for free. Garret currently found himself at All Good Things an hour past the midday meal of Lofdag, the middle of the week. The crowd was thinning quickly, with most of the patrons returning to their labors or other tasks. He watched as each patron departed, creating quick fictions for each, some purposely mundane, while others were outlandishly conspiratorial and fantastical. As the exit of individuals slowed, Garret procured another glass, this time with several hunks of cheese, which he paid for, more out of guilt than requirement. The owner, Rourke, and his children scurried about the space, clearing the dishes and giving the barest attention to the surfaces of the worn pine tables, with most of the crumbs or chicken bones being pushed to the planks of the floor. They would eventually be crushed underfoot or kicked only to fall between the planks to the ground below. The patrons that remained huddled to their own drinks or moved to a new table, creating distance. Garret watched with more narrative curiosity, crafting tales of spies from distant lands, or mercenary agents employed by the Nolish lands to the south, acting as traitors to their own species. He was so absorbed with his impromptu tale of mystery, he did not see the trio of men approach his own table until they stood before him. Garret, spoke a deep, deadpan voice, drawing him out of his reverie. Garret looked up, an amused grin on his face, which quickly faded as he recognized the man who spoke it. "Lawrence Westdown, by the gods as I live and breathe," he responded boldly. When Garret saw the man's expression did not change, his own brightness in his face dimmed to match, and his tone duplicated the deadpan. "Perhaps you would prefer the term father." Garret continued, "I assume I am allowed to use that term for you? That is, of course, only if you consider me to still be your son." The older man gave a curt smile, while the men to either side of him remained expressionless. "The city has clearly improved your dry wit. You are even less funny now than when you left. Being banished and having to fend for yourself amongst, how did you put it? Oh, yes, the unclean teaches you a thing or three." Garret took another sip of wine. "It has allowed me to acquire a more refined palate, however. You still haven't answered my question, Father." Lawrence Westdown sighed, setting himself on the opposite bench from Garret. Looking the younger man in the eye, he spoke in a softer tone. "Yes. Despite you looking too deeply into what you shouldn't have, and disobeying a direct order from me, and leaving me no choice but to banish you, you are still my son." Garret paused, finishing off the last bit of cheese in his wine before replying. The silence hung heavy while he did so. "Thank you, Father. It doesn't truly change the seething rage or scorn I have towards you, and even more so for Mother, for not defending me, but I suppose it is a start." Garret's father closed his eyes in frustration and released another deep sigh, while his son continued. "But I cannot imagine that is why you came here to visit upon me. It is unlike you to confirm my health and well-being and tell me that I am still your son." The elder Westdown nodded. "You are correct. As much as it pains me to admit this, we need your help." Lawrence swallowed hard. I need your help. With what? Garret looked incredulous. You and the family name are highly regarded with the sacred mission. You have more than enough gold and riches at your disposal. He pointed at the muscled men flanking his father. Enough stout bladesmen and spies to get what you need by stealth or force, and of course my beautiful older sister to charm any other courtiers or vain merchants who would have things you might desire, but don't want to buy. Lawrence winced at the mention of Garret's sister. It is the last one which presents our problem that affects the first one you mentioned. Your sister. She has fallen ill and cannot undertake her mission as sentry to the portal. Garret grew concerned as he felt a twinge inside his skull. Helen, she is ill? Lawrence nodded. She is indeed. Bedridden for these past 2 weeks. She fills her sick buckets daily. Most smells only make things worse, and she lacks any vigor to do even the smallest tasks for long. It would be impossible for her to make the journey this year to secure the locks upon the portal. Garret absently reached for his empty glass of wine to drink, only stopping after raising it to his lips. Lowering it, a smile suddenly crossed his face. Father, if I did not know better, I would think it sounds as if my dear sister Helen has become filled with child. Lawrence winced again and chose to stay silent, but Garret read his expression like a child's scroll. He let out a belly laugh. In between chuckles, Garret taunted his father. Oh, how this must embarrass you. The scandal of having to banish your son for daring to bring light and air to our family's dirty linens, and now your only other child pregnant with one of her own. And she's not even betrothed. Garret leaned in conspiratorially. So tell me, do we know which of her 9 suitors it might be? It's quite the puzzle, I'd imagine. The father slammed a fist on the table, shaking it and knocking the empty glass over. The other patrons and Rourke turned, but glares from the Westdown guards caused them to quickly look away. Lawrence grabbed his son's tunic, pulling him close. Listen to me, you disrespectful piece of excrement. Despite your lack of integrity and your sister's lack of standards, you are still both of Westdown blood. We have a sacred task in these lands, a task that only we can do. Garret felt a twinge again in his skull and then a warm wetness seeping from his nose. It was happening again. His father's eyes flicked to the gathering drop of blood coming from his son's nose, then back to Garret's eyes. Even with your cursed condition, this is something that must be done. Your sister is unable to undertake the mission this year, and the time is nigh. So it falls to you, and you will do this. Not for me, not for your sister, but for the rest of these souls that took you in when you were cast into the streets. All these new friends you have made, these people who are simply trying to live their lives, ignorant or ignoring the terrors that hide in the shadows. We have been chosen to spare them those horrors, so that they may laugh, sing, and make wine no better than cat piss for you to lie and say that you enjoy. Do my words ring true to your wax-filled ears? Garret paused once again, then meeting his father's gaze, whispered, Yes. Lawrence released his son and leaned back. Good! Turning his gaze toward the main body of the inn, he addressed Rourke while tossing his son a handkerchief. Rourke, my good man, my son has decided to take up our family's sacred duty this year. Lawrence's voice took on a practiced but false enthusiasm. He honors me and his family. Another round of your finest vintage for everyone here in your fine inn. Rourke saluted and smiled. Of course, good Master Westdown. I shall attend to this right away. Lawrence nodded to one of his guards who promptly exited the inn. Do not fear. I will not send you alone in your quest. You have needs of assistance, and I shall provide. Garret took the opportunity to wipe the blood free of his face. The guard returned, another man in tow. He was mousy in appearance, his traveling clothes hanging loose over his scant frame. His blonde hair was disheveled, and what little beard he sported was patchy and unkempt. As Rourke set the bottle and extra mugs down at the table, the gangly man approached. "Greetings to you, Garret. I am Phrixus." Garret felt another twinge in his sinuses as a new stream of blood began to flow. Author's note. So, this time around for Book 5, I am doing an experiment of sorts. It's going to be another serial, so it'll be a multi-chapter story from me. But the way in which I came up with both the plot for the story and the characters has been done by things outside of me, I guess is the best way to say that. I'm going to be releasing a special episode within the next day or two after this episode, which kind of explains the process. It's not required listening, but suffice to say, I used random cards and other things to help me generate almost everything I need for this particular story. So I'm kind of looking forward to where this particular challenge is going to take me. I hope you enjoyed it. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. For more information about our authors, please visit bitesizedtales.com or follow us on Instagram at bite_size_tales or on Blue Sky at bitesizedtales.bsky.social. We look forward to reading to you next time.